Hey there, welcome back. It's Louisa from Feel Good Astrology. So I released my forecast for Uranus and Jupiter through the signs a few days ago, and I have to say, I think it might be my best video yet. It's like whew, it's skyrocketed, but it's brought up quite a lot of questions from people because I think, given that Uranus brings up a lot of change and innovation and also some shock. And also because Jupiter amplifies anything that it's around. And it grows things very, very quickly. I think for a lot of people, they're maybe a bit worried, a bit curious. Things are moving quite fast at the moment. And also it is just at the, it just snuck in at the end of the eclipse season. And also tomorrow we've got the full moon in Scorpio. So, it's couched right in the middle of a lot of exciting stuff. Interestingly, I was talking about, how in 1941 and in previous Jupiter conjunctions with Uranus in Taurus, there was this kind of revaluing type energy going on and something to do with money. And one of my colleagues or friends, in fact, why did I say colleague? One of my friends, she messaged me and said, "Oh my God, Bitcoin has gone through a big change." So maybe you can tell me in the comments what that change is, because I don't really understand it. But things like Bitcoin, any kind of cryptocurrency, has all the hallmarks of Uranus and Jupiter. The technology aspect and also the rapid growth and that things change really, really quickly. So. Yes. What I wanted to do then, given that so many people had asked specific questions in the comments, what happens if it's in a conjunction with Jupiter, it's on my descendant and this, that, and the other. I thought I would approach it all very sort of methodically, doing a little information dump according to where Jupiter and Uranus is falling right now in your charts. Now, I wouldn't do this with other aspects because, to be fair, they can move quite quickly, but this is going to be going on for a while and it's been coming in for a while. And, the energy stamp, I guess, like the cycle that starts, it is creating change in your chart somewhere. It's there, it's residing in a part of your unique birth chart at some place. And so, yeah, fair enough. Let's see what energy is being stimulated by this growth and change. So yeah, I'm breaking it down. So here's what we're going to do. But before I break it down, I just first of all wanted to just thank everybody that has sponsored this show in the past and right now. I really, really appreciate you all for your kind wishes. It really, really makes my day when I get a donation or a nice little message. So thank you very, very much. So let's see how I'm going to break this down. And we'll run through it just as long as it takes. So the first thing I say is just check your birth chart. It's really, really easy to do. I recommend you use www.astro.com. You can set up a free account and then put in your time, place, and date of birth, and it'll bring up your charts. Now, I have done other videos in the past to explain how to do this, so I'm not going to go over that here. And I'm pretty sure most of you that will be watching this know already how to do that, given the questions. So what I'm going to say is, like, the best way to use this video is just to check your birth chart and then ask yourself this question: do I have any of these? So the first thing is, do I have the conjunction, i.e. Jupiter conjunct Uranus? It looks like this, Jupiter is this symbol here. Uranus looks like a space invader. So they're together. So you want to ask yourself, do I have the conjunction on an angle? These are the angles: the ascendant, the IC, the descendant, the midheaven. These are the 4 angles. These are always horizontal in my charts. Now, the IC and MC might be here, here, here. They can vary a little bit, but the IC is always underneath this line. The MC is always over the top. So if you've got this going over one of your angles, it's likely to be creating it's generating quite a lot of energy for you in your chart. As you can see here, you've got Jupiter and Uranus right slap bang on this person's ascendant. then you might also want to ask yourself, do I have the conjunction but in an aspect? Oh, sorry, the actual question was, do I have it on an angle, also a cusp or a natal planet? And that's important. So a cusp, these are the cusps. These are essentially, it's almost like a doorway from one house. These are all the houses. You can see them numbered in the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way around to 12. And so these are like the doorways. These are the cusps, the doorway between the first and second. This is the second house cusp, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So if you've got this on a cusp, in my last video, I said that the previous Jupiter and Uranus cycle had started right on my fifth cusp. And a month later, I was in a relationship with a man I've married and also pregnant. So, starting a family, it really didn't take long for us. So it really created like massive change. And I do think that is possible when you have this take place on a cusp. And is it on a natal planet? So, could it be over maybe this conjunction here of Mars and Jupiter in this person's chart, or over Saturn? We're going to look at all of those planets. You might also want to ask yourself, is it in an aspect, like in an opposition, a square, or a trine, or a sextile? Now, if you know about astrology, you should be able to see this. But for instance, if you had a planet up here at around 22 degrees in the sign of Aquarius, it would be in what's known as a square to that planet. What I can see is this particular conjunction in this person's chart is in a trine to Saturn. It's in a trine to Venus. So you might also want to consider that. My next question would be, have you got Sagittarius, Aquarius, or Pisces ruling an angle? Because, and you might be wondering why I've asked that, but Sagittarius and Pisces are ruled by Jupiter. So for instance, if you had Sagittarius or Pisces ascendant, then your ruler is Jupiter, and Jupiter being in a conjunction with Uranus is significant, so that would be creating quite a big impact on your chart. Similarly, if you've got Aquarius ascendant, then one of your rulers is Uranus. I always consider the modern day rulers, I have to be honest. So I would consider Uranus to be your ruling planet. And that being in a conjunction with Jupiter is significant. Now, I actually work with, in fact, in the last 3 days when I was working on charts, every single person that I worked with had Jupiter and Uranus in a significant place. And that is, I think, the proof of astrology. Whatever is going on in the cosmos, when people get in touch and they want me to read their charts, it's always because that thing that's going on in the cosmos is creating a big change in their chart. So I wasn't surprised. But I worked with somebody who had their ascendant in the sign of Aquarius. So yeah, just to highlight this. So they had this isn't their chart, by the way, but this is somebody else's chart. They've got their ascendant in the sign of Aquarius, which is the ruler of, which is ruled by Uranus down here, and their midheaven in Sagittarius. Again, both of these two. So your ascendant and your midheaven being highlighted, with this aspect is pretty significant. Similarly, I do know that I've got clients with Pisces rising or ascendant and Sagittarius midheaven. So again, if you've got two angles ruled by a Jupiter sign, that's also going to highlight that. So that's also something worth considering. And then the last thing I would consider in summing up how important this is in your chart, I would consider, like, what is the quality of your Jupiter and Uranus in your birth chart? So for instance, in mine, they're in a really nice, easy trine in the water signs of Scorpio and Pisces. And so I would think about, well, that, Jupiter, my Jupiter's in Pisces, so it's very, very comfortable there, and it's very functional, very flowing, very intuitive, very sort of expanded and wanting to connect spiritually. And then Uranus and Scorpio is like an antenna for anything psychic. So these two together, I really put down as how I tune into astrology. So, with that lovely flowing aspect, I know that this particular conjunction is quite prominent for me, because these two planets are flowing so easily. And so far in the week leading up to this, I had some really big and positive news, and literally on the day of the conjunction, which was yesterday, we had me and my husband, who's also got it very highlighted in his chart, we had a very, very interesting meeting with some very sort of interesting people. I can't really say anything just yet, but when it's all confirmed, I'll release my big news. But there's some really exciting stuff going on, and so funny and ironic that it is happening right at this time. So yeah. Now in this particular person's chart, I brought this up because and they're no longer with us, actually. This person, if they were still here, they would be going through their Uranus return. So they're obviously around about 84, if they were still here. Now, this person, their Uranus and Jupiter are in a square. Both the Jupiter and the Uranus are on angles to do with the home and partners. Now, if you're like wondering about your security, like Jupiter, on an angle in the home, is often indicative of a move, so this is somebody who made some big moves in their life. And Uranus on the Descendant isn't particularly restful. It does create a lot of change in terms of your relationships and the kinds of people that you might want in your life. And I know this person had some ups and downs, not just with their partner, but with family members. And so, this square kind of really described all these really major changes this person had. And of course, if they were still here today, having Jupiter and Uranus right on their south node, on their Descendant, at the time of the Uranus return in a square to Jupiter, and the angle to do with the home, the IC, is also known as the nadir. It's also obviously by default in opposition to the Ascendant and the North Node. It's also in a ton of squares to other things as well. This, I think, would have represented a very, very difficult time for this person. So, assessing the quality of your Jupiter and Uranus is really, really important. Now, I'm not saying that these aspects are all doom and gloom. This person led a very, very exciting life, but it wasn't without complications. And so people who have these kind of setups in their charts often grow accustomed to living at a different pace and speed, and they make the most of it, like this person did. So assess the quality. So these are my sort of major rules, not major rules, but what I'm suggesting you might do. So look for a conjunction on an angle, cusp, or planet. Check to see if there are any opposition squares, trines, or sextiles from other planets. Consider if you have any angles in Sagittarius, Aquarius, or Pisces, and also have a look at the quality of your own Uranus and Uranus and Jupiter. So let's get cracking. Let's have a look. So this first part, I'm just going to look at the angles and also the north and south node. I really like the angles. I consider these to be like north, south, east, and west. Now, I wouldn't want to actually give a particular direction and say, this is more important or whatever. But, these angles are, I think, the directions. If we imagine we're in the center, the Ascendant is everything about you, your birth, your arrival. It is about your whole being and also the boundaries. And then on the other side of the boundaries is everybody else. And then, the IC and the MC, this is very much about our home and our stability and our past, our childhood and what we've done with it. I also think of it as being very, very private. And then this is the complete opposite. This is away. This is when we leave home, we go to work, we go out of the home. So I see this as in and out, home and away, young, older, sort of everything we start in our childhood and what we do with it. This is us standing strong in the world. So, these are kind of very, very much the directions of our life. And so, yeah, right now, let's whiz through them and get a sense. So if you've got Jupiter and Uranus on your ascendant, this is a very sort of significant time, really significant time. First of all, Uranus will have been inching through your 12th house for quite some time, and that brings up a whole load of stuff for you, like the 12th house. And if you're interested, you could listen to I've got a podcast or a video. I've got a Uranus playlist. If you go and look up Uranus in the 12th house, that'll give you a really good idea as to the effects of what it would be like to have Uranus inching through your 12th house very, very slowly. I think the transit of that is at the end of that particular track. Now, Uranus going through your 12th house is awakening all the unconscious thoughts and behaviors and things like that, and anything that you're not comfortable with, anything that's in your blind sight that you aren't consciously aware of, but you sense maybe behind you lurking. It's all there. And Uranus can create some massive shocks as it kind of comes to the surface. It also increases your intuition, which is a blessing, and also can be very, very disruptive. It can be a time when we almost feel like we're losing our mind a little bit, because we become aware of so many different things that we weren't necessarily aware of before. So it's huge. And then Jupiter going through this also, I think, emphasizes anything that's not quite right in the way we're thinking and feeling spiritually. It really shows us where there are cracks, where we're trying to paper over the cracks in our consciousness, where there are things that don't make sense. Jupiter just absolutely inflames it and makes it very, very visible. The good side to that is you get very aware of what you want to heal. So the chances are, as they've been going through this sign, you've probably had some very, very strong things going on. You'd have had some very strong reactions. And especially as they got closer and closer and closer and closer, then boom, they're right on your ascendant. This is like the start of a whole new age for you. Jupiter, this won't be the first time, most likely, because I'm guessing most people watching this are over the age of 11, 12. So you would have gone through, probably 3 Jupiter returns by the time you're like my target audience. And, Uranus going over this is pretty much a one-time event. So this is significant. This is creating a new opening, a new uplift, I think, especially with Jupiter coming over this. We might put on weight a little bit. I was pregnant the last time this happened to me. I got really, really fat. Uranus going over this really almost creates a difference in your body, the way, the way you are. You may well change your appearance, really change something about your identity. It's pretty intensive and surprising, and most likely deeply shocking to the people in your life, because it's happening over here to you. It's not happening to them, but they see it happening to you. And of course, everyone's got an opinion when you're going through change, right? So yeah, it's creating a whole new sort of integral shift. Now, if we were to sorry, I'm not going any deeper than that, but I want to sort of motor through. So, and this, if you've got this going on down here, the IC, that's Latin, that means like the sort of base of the sky, I guess, base of the heavens, or lowest point in the heavens. Nadir is another name for the IC. Think of it as the start of the home, the start of your security. It's the anchor that's holding you down. And this 4th house is all about the home and stability and security. Now, obviously, if you think of the home, you've got Jupiter inflaming things and also creating hope and optimism. So often people move when Jupiter goes over this point. The person I mentioned before emigrated, I think a couple of times in their life, very much, I think, because they had Jupiter right on this point in their chart. So yeah, this can show a shift, maybe upgrading, needing more space, wanting like maybe more land. Maybe there's more people coming into your world, into your home. So it can really show a sort of multiplication of your family or homes. And then Uranus coming in as well sometimes creates the shock part of the home, or why you might be moving. So I know people who've been born with Uranus in the fourth house who've had very, very disruptive childhoods, where maybe their parents moved around a lot, or when something sudden happened to a parent, or something really sudden and fundamental happened in their early childhood. I've seen that a lot in people's charts. Yeah, and it's such a sudden thing that there is this almost feeling of insecurity, because how can you trust that everything's going to be okay? Because we have no guarantees, do we? So having Uranus in the fourth house can be really destabilizing, and it can show that one of your parents is quite a restless person, who are prone to change, and so because of their changes, you might have been affected by them. So it's pretty big if you've got it here. But if it's coming in, you may well be the one going through some big change. So you might not want to be in your home anymore. You might not want to be in the same family. It sometimes shows up with rifts between partners that maybe are coming up to be reconciled, and some that are really okay, we're done now. So it can bring up a hell of a lot. Now, that said, because I never like to just go down the route of, it's all doom and gloom, because, I, for one, really like a lot of change. I need a lot of it. But yeah, I mean, for some, actually, I've got Jupiter in here as well. So that's probably why. And I've moved a lot. But Uranus coming in here, Uranus also shows us where the excitement is, and where there are opportunities, and it's something inventive, something futuristic. So there could be lots of other interpretations, and it would be wrong just to go down a doom and gloom. One of the I'm wanting to address this in a book later on this year, but I do have a lot of people that sometimes in my comments, and fair play, I've been there and done that, and I still do that from time to time. But I have a lot of people that say, I've got this going on. It's really, really difficult for me. And it's probably this, it's because of my, Uranus in the fourth house, and my really bad Chiron in the eighth, and my Pluto in the 12th, and things like that. And I understand that these are actually the fourth, eighth, and 12th houses, I think, are quite difficult, because they're so empathic, so psychic, slightly private houses. And so it can take a long time. If you've got outer planets in these areas, it can take a long time to unpack what's going on in your life. But when I do see a chart, I really do see that there is a chart. There's a gift to everybody's chart. And I honestly don't believe we get given a chart that we cannot handle. It's like, the way I see it, I see a chart as being, well, not like DNA, because I'm not a doctor or anything, but it's absolutely individual to you. I absolutely see it like a gift. It's like the gift of your body, or the gift of your soul. It's like the road. I really honestly think it's like a roadmap. I don't think it should be there to punish us. And I think when we can see everything as a gift and wonder what might be behind some of the stuff. And I really do want to say, I've struggled with my own planets a lot in the past, and it's taken me a long time to see the gift in them all. And actually, with this channel, I'd really love the most, can't believe I'm saying it here, but what I would really, really love to bring about is to help people fall in love with their birth chart. That would be absolutely the biggest gift I think I could work on in my lifetime, is if I could help people fall in love with their birth charts, and start working with them in such a way where they feel confident. And so anyway, rant over. Having these planets going over your IC could be an indication of some very deep change, and it could be a lot of instability. And I often notice that in the charts of people, these are hard to see, but the hindsight usually is like, yeah, things got better. So yes, it brings up a lot of instability, or it can do. And it could be instability for a lot of really, really good and exciting reasons. And then also sometimes these good and exciting things can also not necessarily, they might not necessarily always be that great, but, I just think life is always up and down. There's always a continuous circle. And I really don't think we can keep like living on an even keel, because life is about growth. And when we're not growing and we're not changing, there is no life. If you stay the same the whole time, you cannot breathe, you cannot move, you cannot grow or anything. So these two planets coming together, to me, they are absolutely, this is why they're so important to me, I guess, is they are absolutely showing you how you are coming back to life. And sometimes parts of your life have to kind of rot back a little bit or be cut off, just so that a bit like when I'm deadheading my roses, I cut bits off and then all of a sudden the bush comes back beautiful. So anyway, this is particularly challenging, and it's not tragic. And if it feels tragic right now, then I am sorry. And sorry, God, I wish I'm not. I'm so sorry if I'm laughing. I'm a bit nervous because I've just said, oh, it's not tragic, and it needn't be tragic. But I know for a lot of people that it can absolutely spell disaster, because we don't necessarily want our life to change in a really, really massive way. I think I'm going to have to rewind this a little bit and start over. Let me make a timestamp. Good God. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, this is also a little bit challenging as well, because the Descendant represents our relationships, and particularly, marriages and all sorts of friendships and strong partnerships that have a really massive resonance in our life. And so having these guys going over here, like Jupiter can create some change, but Jupiter tends to move, he's not there for months on end usually, whereas Uranus most likely will be, because Uranus will move forwards, so many degrees each year, and then move backwards and then forwards again. And so, Uranus going over one of your angles can seem like it's going on forever. It would take the best part of a year to completely clear this, sometimes a little bit more, maybe. I should actually find out how long that would take, but it does seem to go on for a long time. However, like most change, if it all happened in one go, we would most likely not be able to cope with it. I realized very recently, actually, that I'm really pleased that, when I try and manifest things, it doesn't all happen at once, because you don't really get that chance to like try it for size. So I think, Uranus going over this particular angle gives you a sense of change, and it gives you time to come into that sense of change. The need that maybe you are ready to make a change, alter your course slightly, go into some kind of maybe seek help to get some kind of tools to get on better with people. That can be really, really useful. Now, also, I'd be remiss not to say that Uranus going over this point can also generate and stimulate the start of a relationship, and it can, generate the energy of exciting people coming into your life. And so, it would be a real shame to miss out on that, or to think that it's all going so badly that it's a really good opportunity, I think, or it can be. Like during this time, your partners do appear to be less reliable. It does seem like your personal relationships are changing quite considerably. I've got Scorpio rising, and about a year and a bit extra ago, I had Uranus going over mine, and it did put a strain on on how I was feeling in terms of how I was experiencing my husband. And yet it happened gradually. So, something would come up and I'd get really cheesed off, and I would be thinking, okay, if this continues, I'm going to get really, really angry. And yes, some things were slightly harder to work through, but according to, I mean, I was very lucky that nothing was um, like like the straw that broke the camel's back. But I see that in relationships that break down during this time, there are many different events that seem to occur that's give you these choice points. They're almost begging you to ask, am I in the right relationship? Am I in the right relationship? And as far as I can see, it gets you discerning more. Another great side to this is it actually gives you more freedom. So in in the discussions that I had after sometimes, going going crazy, I actually realized that the behaviors I was experiencing, and not just around my husband, but around other people, was really opening me up and showing me that I needed more freedom. People with this going on in their charts, the people around them are showing them that they need freedom, and it filters back to you. So as I got, as I considered the possibility of being okay with the changes that the people in my life were going through, I realized that by default gave me more space to be myself. That's really, really significant. And so I'm really grateful for that difficult experience that went on for about 9 or 10 months. And at the same time, Saturn was down here as well. So yeah, when you have these slow moving planets going over your angles, it can spell disaster. It can break a lot of people right down. And it can also strengthen us. And you come out the other end. And if you are able to strengthen in this time, it's freeing you up. It's giving you so much more vision and scope and opportunity, and a deeper friendship, with a lot more, I guess, consciousness, freedom, truth. Yeah. So I actually think it's quite beneficial. But I understand if you're going right through this at the moment, probably the people around you have been peeing on your chips quite a bit, and and really getting on your nerves. And then Jupiter going over this is pretty big. But like if you're single, this could be the start of a really exciting relationship, or possibly a new vibration coming into your life. So you might have a few very strong like affairs or people coming in trying to get your attention, and it really shakes you up, because this is real shake up energy. And then you really do meet that person with the right vibration for you, a really good match. But the whole thing here is shaking you up, it's changing your vibration. This is harder than I thought it would be. It really is. So I've got quite a few clients that come to me during Uranus going over this, because this is also very significant, because the midheaven, or the MC, now this is like the point of us growing up. This is the point of us stepping out in the world. And of course, if we're growing up and stepping out of the world, it often involves saying goodbye to parents, like we outgrow our parents, or we become too big to live in their homes, and we start out our own lives. And the midheaven is really showing us how we stand up and how we stand stronger. And so as Uranus comes over this point, I've noticed in a lot of the charts of people around me that it's happened at a time when maybe parents get sick, or caregivers get sick, or older people that we really rely on that have almost been carrying the baton, and it's time for us to run past them and grab the baton as we go past. I'm not saying like you outrun them and like kick them over or anything like on a sports day at school, but and I never did that, by the way. But this is a time when we are surpassing and moving beyond our parents. And so often in the charts of people that have come up, they've lost a parent. And that's not a given, that doesn't happen all the time, but it's what I've noticed in with the people I work with. The other things that I've noticed, as Uranus is slowly going over this point, and that is that people's need for freedom and their need for expression gets really, really strong. And then they start to really need independence in the way they work. They need to break away from anything that's really holding them down, because they need to know that they can stand strong in the world. And so you know, if you're going through this, you are probably wanting to prove to yourself that you are independent, you are strong, you are absolutely moving beyond where you were, and you can do it. And you're freeing yourself, you're giving yourself every single chance to do that in a beautiful way. And then, of course, Jupiter going through this point. Now, Jupiter going over this point is seen as very beneficial, you know, because it helps you rise up. It doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes you could get really exposed, because also here, you know, and the 10th house shows where our reputations are. And so, you know, you are a public figure. Like anytime Jupiter comes through here, you know, people notice you a lot more. And having Uranus here as well can absolutely put you in the limelight in a way that you might not be expecting. You may feel quite raw and exposed. So it may take some time to get used to that energy, which is why it really serves us that it takes Uranus a good 9 months or so, going back and forth intensely over this spot. It's really helping you come into yourself. So this is very significant, and this can really shift you forwards. And sometimes it can be also very, very lonely, because it feels like you're doing it on your own. And of course, all of these angles work in opposition to each other as well. So if you're coming out and you're, you know, really sort of being strong in your life, and knowing that you can stand for yourself, it moves you out of your home. So like if you are a family person, you know, to protect your family, you're kind of moving away from them a little bit. You're stepping outside of the home, and that can bring up a lot of difficulties, you know. So wherever these are going over your angles, it's creating a change. So, you know, please forgive me if I've offended anyone in describing it and being a little lighthearted. I just honestly see that all of these can create immense disruption, which shouldn't be overlooked. And yet it also creates immense opportunity. And sometimes we don't see that opportunity for quite some time. But, you know, I guess what I would say is this too shall pass. You know, this will pass. Sometimes, you know, it passes like a kidney stone, but it will move on. Now, when these come over a north node or a south node, they are kind of, I see these as significant moments in your life. So if it's going over your north node, it feels like there's some significant move forwards that's really upping the ante for you. Now, the north node, it does show, I guess, the sort of future path for you. And almost like if you believe in karma, it describes some of the things that you're learning in this lifetime. If you believe in, you know, that we come back again and again and again. Not everyone believes that. So I'm trying to say this in a way that works for everyone. But you know how we might have a sense of our destiny and where we're going. And the North Node describes that quite well. And it also shows us the kind of patterns that we repeat and how we repeat them. So if you've got this going on right now, and your North Node will be in the sign of Taurus if Uranus and Jupiter are right over it. I would say any upsets and change that you're going on right now are to do with finding security and maybe learning to live differently with security. You know, are you meant to be as secure as you want to be? You know, people with the North Node in Taurus really want to feel absolutely secure, and to know that they've got these very, very strong foundations around them. And yet those very foundations can absolutely cause all sorts of kind of slowing down of things. So it's like, how can you use your resources in an exciting way? You know, how can you change how you live your life with your resources? How can you get excited by them? And it may well, you know, show up as somebody exciting coming into your life that really puts you on a new trajectory. Maybe they've got a lot of resources that they're bringing to you. So yeah, that seems quite important. And like if you've got the South Node, I've used this chart before earlier. Now this person was born with the South Node and Uranus. this will be reminding you of something that's linked you in the past. It's almost like an old pattern, and might also show an old side of you actually that is surprisingly coming alive right now. So it might be old business, old things coming up, things that haven't been laid to rest or that you thought had laid to rest. And all of a sudden it comes out, it jumps out and you goes, boo. um, and because it's in the sign of Taurus, if that's where your South Node is, you may well find old securities, old affections, all the sort of Taurus themes of, money, comfort, luxury, wealth, love, companionship. Like Taurus loves nature as well. So it could be all these old situations that might describe your life as it was, or how you think you may have had sort of past lives coming up. So, this can be quite shocking. It can like shock remind you of where you were, and maybe where you still want to be sometimes, because the past often, the South Node often shows us where we found it a lot easier because it's like we knew the rules of the game. So maybe with this, you're also being reminded to, ask yourself, well, what did I do really well back then? How can I bring that into my now, right here, right now? How can I use that information? So yeah, they are I think some useful ways of thinking about the nodes and the angles. I hope that's helpful. Now I'm not going to go through the houses because I kind of covered that within the big sort of 12 sign forecast in a roundabout way. But let's have a look on a planet by planet basis now. So lots of people, if they're born, around this time. So let's say from maybe the 8th of May around to the 18th of May, the chances are, well, you will have Uranus and Jupiter on your sun. Some it will be a lot more accurate than others, so this is a very significant thing for you. Now, the sun, if you think about it, it represents your personality. It represents, I guess, a lot of your characteristics. What are you known for? What's at the core of you? So I always think identity, so obviously, the sun in Taurus, I was already describing Taurus, they want to be comfortable. They want to get on, they want peace, they want harmony. And they do prefer things to actually be quite regular. And I guess the reason why they like things regular and kind of stable is because they've kind of perfected their life. They get to practice it. So they get to practice it and they're quite practical. That's one of the things I really love about Taurians is they really know what they like and they really know what they don't like. And yet having Uranus and Jupiter right over the sun, you might not recognize your Taurian friend right now, or you might not recognize yourself because you're realizing that you have new preferences. There are new things coming into your awareness about what might suit you. You're realizing something about yourself that is a little bit shocking and a little bit disruptive. It's a little bit new, and so it's likely to bring up a bit of discomfort. And it's not critical. I mean, it is shifting you. I mean, it can be critical, I guess. So for instance, if, when you got married to somebody or committed to somebody or committed to a job, you knew yourself as being this particular person, then obviously Uranus coming over this and showing you that you're a really different person, that could really, really change your whole life. And if you want to be in integrity with it, that can create a lot of difficulty because, you might be worried about hurting people as you try to explain how different you feel and how different you are. It creates these very awkward conversations. And yet, if you really want to be free and know who you are, and trust me, Uranus is about feeling freedom. Ultimately, it's very much about the consciousness of who you are. Like, why are you here? What did you come for? It's like you are suddenly realizing who you really are. And yeah, that could really create waves for people around you. So a lot of people born around this time are going through some really big shifts right now. And so, yeah, if I was in your shoes, I think one of the gifts I would give myself is I would give myself the gift of time and give myself the gift of reflection. Now, it might not seem that you have as much time in reflection because Uranus coming over this really speeds things up big style, and sometimes you have things coming at you. You almost need to be a bit like Neo in the Matrix. You're kind of like moving all over the place, bending backwards. It just feels like life is coming at you. And yeah, it's bringing lots of opportunities, and it's okay to say which ones aren't for you, because the moment you start declaring, well, that's not me, this isn't what I'm here for, I'm for this. So it's not so much saying what you're not for, but really saying what you are for. Life is going to start changing and flowing in a really good way, and in a new way. And of course, as with all change, sometimes it gets a bit messy, sometimes it gets a bit tiring and a little bit overwhelming, in particular for a Taurus. Obviously, Jupiter coming over the sun is usually seen as a very sort of beneficial thing, because we are able to express ourselves more. We get a sense of well-being. So again, this could be the start of a very interesting period of time for you. Now, if it's going over the moon, that does most likely bring up a lot of emotions for you. If you think the moon, it's your psyche, your emotions, your intuition. It's that kind of irrational side of us, when we suddenly feel something, and it doesn't necessarily match our personality, but all of a sudden there's something going on, and we know something's going on because we feel so rotten in our body. All of a sudden it's like, what am I feeling right now? And, for those people that are very good at reading their body language and their internal, people that are really tuned into themselves will know what's going on for them. But for a lot of people, it doesn't come that easily. All that happens is we notice that something doesn't quite feel right, or something feels really exciting, or actually rather than exciting, given that your moon's in Taurus, I would say most likely something feels slightly dangerous and exciting at the same time. So we get the sense that there is change, but we might not be able to put our finger on it for quite some time. Remember, it takes Uranus quite some time to move up towards your moon and then go back and then go over it again. So, and sometimes I think I've seen it happen that it's gone backwards and forwards, like it appears it happens twice, almost like, where it comes up and it's not the complete conjunction, but it's only a couple of minutes of arc away. And so some people it seems to happen longer for. So what's going on here is this real deep sort of stirring in the unconscious mind and in the realm of feelings and intuition. And it's almost like you're all over the place. And the chances are you'll be having these really strong feelings out of nowhere that you can't quite put your finger on. And they might be, in particular, you might be having very strong feelings about people in your life, or very strong attractions of people coming in. And it can be really, really disturbing. You might also find or feel that somebody's playing with your emotions as well. So it can be quite tiring. However, it's also, it might be showing you that you're ready to shift. You're actually ready to shift up a gear. You're ready to let go of some of the things that trigger you. You're ready to maybe face yourself a little bit in a new way, in a really sort of personal way. Like the sun is very much our external persona. The moon side of us is what the people that know us see, so, obviously I come across one way in my videos. Now I think I'm pretty similar. I think I'm very much the same, but anyone that knows me probably sees other sides that I can't quite consciously put my finger on, but they all see it, and it's the same here. So for people with their moon in Taurus, the other people around them will be noticing it probably more than they will be. They'll be like, oh God, they're shifting. What's going on? And then Jupiter going over the moon, again, is seen as quite an exciting thing. It's giving us that sense of growth, this sense of connection to our emotions, and our intuition can really deepen in that time, and our compassion and our forgiveness. We become really soft, I think, when Jupiter goes over the moon. We're not very disciplined at that time. So if you can imagine that you're sort of softer, more compassionate, more forgiving, and less disciplined, and also if we're kind of shocked with our emotions and our strength of feeling, it can be quite a tumultuous time. It can be a very sort of fun and sexy time too. If you're single, it could really create a whole batch of fun, exciting experiences for you. Because if you think the moon, it moves so fast, that everything that's going on there could be like little micro moments. So yeah, it's creating a sort of change in the way you're feeling things in quite a big way. Now, Mercury is obviously about the mind. It's about how we communicate. Sarcasm is one thing that I imagine is really, really strong for you right now. So yeah, Mercury is the mind and the communication. Uranus is seen as the higher mind. And so I think Mercury is our conscious thought. Uranus is our unconscious, sort of telepathic, like light thinking, so you're most likely cooking on gas right now, in terms of, it's like, wow, all these ideas, just this need to move around a lot, because Mercury is a very fast planet, is always sort of interacting in lots of different ways and with lots of different things. If you think of the sign of Gemini as well, you get a really good sense of that. So Mercury is all about moving. Now, obviously, Mercury in Taurus is a little bit more practical, which is great, but it's certainly expanded with Uranus over it. When I look at the charts of designers, architects, people that can plan things with the minutest bit of detail, but needs to be really technical, and it's almost like, wow, that person's a genius. Where do they get that from? I really noticed that Uranus and Mercury are some pairings that go really, really well. Saturn's also helpful in that, but Uranus and Mercury, I think a stroke of genius is upon you. So this is going on. This is a great time to learn something. If you're passionate about something, and you're really curious to learn more, get yourself a mentor. Get someone that's going to really stretch you, get someone that's going to take you on a journey and get you really, really learning something at a deep, and I would say existential basis. Like, really push the boundary of your understanding, because the more you look at something from all these different sort of fractals of information, the more you're going to get, and it's going to be quite mind-blowing. Jupiter going over Mercury is also expanding your mind thought. Now, I did mention sarcasm because Mercury can be sarcastic, especially when he's a bit triggered, and especially when he gets a little bit arrogant. And of course, Jupiter is known for arrogance in the wrong combination. So Mercury, Jupiter coming together, you might want your voice to be heard far and wide. You could become a beautiful orator. You can absolutely become somebody who does these beautiful, compelling speeches during this time. And yet you could also become a massive bore and really, it's that person again. So, that's going on. And also with Uranus, Uranus can be cutting and shocking. So, if you are a comedian or something, you could absolutely come up with some of your best material right now. And I would absolutely recommend that if your job relies on shocking, this could actually be quite useful. So really awesome. Make the most of this one. Venus then. Well, Venus, as most of us know, Venus is all about love. She's also about connection. She's also about feeling good. She's also about companionship, collaboration, all sorts of flow. So, Venus is a flow planet. Now, Venus and Jupiter are known as being the two benefics. They both have a beneficial energy. And Jupiter and Venus coming together is always, I think, beautiful. It's always lovely. There is this feeling of, I think, a feeling of homeliness, like you belong. We've got I don't know why I'm saying this, but we've got like this furry blanket that I might throw over myself if I sit outside and have a cup of tea at night and chat whilst listening to the crickets. And our kids, they say that it's like, this blanket is like 1,000 mum hugs. It's what they say. And A thousand mum hugs, I think, is that feeling of belonging that you might get with Jupiter and Venus together. It is that feeling of everything is going to be okay. It's like a beautiful mug of hot chocolate. And just, warming your hands up and sipping this lovely chocolate. And of course, Jupiter and Venus together they can be gluttonous, they can like the good things too much. But yeah, there is this feeling of well-being. So, sometimes when Jupiter and Venus get together, not much happens because you are actually just feeling good. And so you don't get off your backside and do anything. However, Uranus with them is actually kind of turbocharging it. So it's creating an impetus to change the way we're relating to people. You may well feel that you might not be in the right relationship, or you might want to make some changes within your relationship. In fact, you might want to change the way you relate to everybody. You may well find that the people around you are slightly abrasive or slightly changeable. You might find that the people in your life are, bringing new stuff, fun stuff, inventive stuff. I see it as predominantly beneficial. I don't see it so much in the way of, oh, it's time to change the relationship. I see it more as an opportunity. It can obviously bring about the end of a relationship, but usually because there is something better coming, usually because, you really know who you want to flow and connect and create with. Um, you know, so I see this as less difficult than when Jupiter and Uranus go over the angle to do with the home or partnership. I see that as a lot more traumatic. That's not to say if it's here and you're going through that. A lot of that would depend also on the quality of your Venus. If your Venus is in lots of flowing aspects with things, it's likely to be enjoyed a lot more. And if your Venus is in very hard aspects and difficult aspects, then this could actually show a bit of a change. So again, when we're looking at where this is, which planet, we're not just looking at that planet, but how is that planet connected in your unique birth chart? In this birth chart, Venus is in a square to Saturn. And so as Jupiter and Uranus were coming in to this conjunction, they also went over Mars and also went into a series of squares. So, this may actually create quite a bit of change for this person. So anyway, let's move on to Mars and get a feeling of this. Now, what I would say here is if you've got anything like this going over Mars, also if your Mars is very close to an angle, watch out for accidents. I'm not predicting accidents. I'm not trying to wish ill health on you or anything like that. But Mars is about your vitality, your sort of yanginess. Like, are you up for a challenge? Do you have enough energy to be determined? Do you have enough energy to protect your boundaries? So I think when Uranus and Mars are kind of interacting together, sometimes our personal boundaries don't seem so solid. They don't seem so sure, like they could change. And of course, when we get unaware of our boundaries, we can get a bit accident prone. So just to give you an example, like when I was, and I'm sure most women, if you've been pregnant, you'll know exactly what this feels like. But your center of gravity is changing on a pretty much day by day basis, especially later on in your pregnancy. And you really don't know where your boundary is. And so often you may well kind of knock your belly. You might walk into things because you don't realize how big you are, but also you're unbalanced. Your center of gravity is changing. And if you keep going at breakneck speed, you may well not have the sense of consciousness and like being really in your body, really listening to what's going on to keep you safe. So often when Uranus and, Mars come together, we're rushing around and we don't know our boundaries. And then, all of a sudden you slip over or, bang into something or do something really sudden. So I always advise people just to pay real particular attention to their boundaries. So that's not just you, but it's, your house, also your car. Because, like when we go in our car, we feel like we've got this extra boundary. But, I've seen cars get really crumpled, pay attention. And pay attention to who's coming. Don't just pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to the people around you. Again, I'm not saying it to make you afraid. I promise that. Really, just to know that when this comes up, and of course, Jupiter amplifies this effect. But when these guys come together, know your boundaries, know your energy, because also Jupiter increases your sense of you have all the energy in the world. And of course, we might get a bit more arrogant, we might get a bit more boastful, we might kind of push ourselves just a bit further than we would usually do. And then Uranus shows like a sudden change, a sudden movement that, maybe unbalances us. So this could be quite volatile. Now, in this particular chart that I'm looking at here, this person's also got their Saturn in opposition to Mars. So again, form, like if you think Saturn, it's your bones, it's how you hold your body, and it's rigid. And then Mars and Uranus and Jupiter is like kind of bashing in and stressing out the bones. So I would absolutely pay really good attention. Now, the flip side of this is your motivation, your courage, your audacity. They're all much higher than usual. So you could absolutely push yourself a little bit more. Just, pay attention to make sure you're not like taking crazy risks. Though, if you were to take some crazy risks, but manage to keep yourself safe, you might actually be able to do something really massive, really change something in your life in a really fundamental and quite awesome way. I mean, this is the kind of thing that might occur at the time of a breakthrough. But often, as you probably know, we have breakdowns and breakthroughs often at the same time. So this is when you really, really feel the Jupiter and Uranus energy in your life. It's not, it's very physical. And of course, if your Mars is on one of these angles, it could really propel you in a completely new direction. I would really watch out for losing your temper as well. So, so it's one thing to know your boundary, but it's also really important to know when you're pushing on other people's boundaries, which could really happen. You'll notice I've snuck Chiron on the end, and I haven't mentioned Neptune or Pluto or Uranus. And all will become clear. I'm guessing most of you know why I haven't put those in, but if not, I'll explain it in a second. So on to Jupiter then. So Jupiter moves approximately one sign every 11.8 months. So the chances are, everyone watching this will be in an adult because it's set that way. So you've all had a Jupiter return. Now, obviously, if you've got this going on right now, you are in the middle of a Jupiter return. So Jupiter is the planet of expansion, luck, moving on, growing, expanding. It's generally seen as quite positive. You can feel a bit exposed because obviously it raises your game. It encourages you to raise your game. And, I would say with all these aspects, you have to actually get off your backside and do something about it as well. So you can also feel this sense of well-being. You feel great and you feel like you can do loads of stuff. But again, sometimes with these Jupiter things, we don't make the most of them because it feels kind of cool and you just think, whatever. So this is a time when you might need to actually work on the good fortune that's around you. Like recognize this as a time when your life could actually move forwards and flow forwards very quickly, very easily, with very few hiccups or restrictions. Because again, Jupiter's not about restrictions. Jupiter's about moving and having this lovely, safe trajectory. So yeah, this is a time to probably work a bit harder. In the other way, like with Mars, I'm saying slow down a little bit. Pay attention. With Jupiter, I'm saying you might need to get off your backside and like be a bit precocious, but not in a rude way. I mean, if you meet people, you might have this extra question that you like give them, like when let's say you're going for a job interview or something, or you're pitching for something really big. You might just have that little extra bit of confidence that marks you out as somebody that's a bit more interesting. But unless you kind of just push yourself that little bit more, a bit like, when you're driving a car and you just rev it up a little bit. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do much, but you just need to use that Jupiter energy. So that's probably what you need to do right now, is just rev it up a little bit. Don't get complacent, or this might just seem to sort of drift off. Now, Uranus coming into a conjunction with your Jupiter has very much the same sort of energy. It's creating a sense of restlessness, a need for change, a need for growth. So, if you've got this going on right now, this is absolutely really in alignment with the whole, the whole feeling within your chart. So all I would say is, I guess, if this is going on for you, get really, really clear about your visions and values, because you could absolutely start to live them. But if you are clear about your direction and really positive, and you're revving up your life a little bit, then I just think you'll be able to get onto that path really easily. So if you come off your path a little bit, it's almost like you've got this intuitive radar kind of just pulling you back onto your right path. And sometimes you might just need to take a risk. You might just need to ask a slightly cheekier question, because Jupiter is known for humor as well. So you might just be a little bit more outspoken. But if it's done with good humor, which again is another Jupiter thing, and not with arrogance and boastfulness, you're probably going to be okay. But again, I would also look at, what's lined up in your chart. So for instance, this person is in a square to Saturn and also a square to Mars, which could create a few difficulties. So you're moving forwards, and there might be people trying to hold you back from your past, or secret people, because it's in your 12th house. Could be your self-sabotage as well. And you've also got Mars in the 6th. So there are different things going on. You've also got Neptune in opposition. So look at the quality of your Jupiter and see how it looks, and act accordingly. For a lot of these things, if you can identify that you've got Mars in a square to Jupiter, if you go onto Google or whatever you use and type in something like interpretation of natal Jupiter square Mars, press enter, see what comes up, and it will give you a description. Then imagine how that energy would blend with the energy of expansion, change, restlessness, opportunity, and see what comes up. Use your intuition to tune into what that means. Anyway, let's move on. Saturn. Now, this is an interesting one because, and there he is, Saturn's over there. So, Saturn is our shape and our form. It is our agreements. It's all the structures in our life. It's our discipline. It's how we expect other people to behave around us as well. It's our expectations. It also encompasses, our kind of virtuous morality. Jupiter has a bit of that going on as well. And between the two of them, one is more spiritual and religious, and the other is more kind of slightly more rational and strict. Like Saturn is kind of strict. So, with Saturn, you might find that there's lots of things in your life right now that you count as a given, like, oh, I love the structure in my life. I love how this is like this, so you might have your life just so. And then Uranus comes up and says, we need to sort of dissemble this, because you're a bit too structured right now. And actually, life is requiring you to have a bit of excitement, and I wonder what we could do. And so and the chances are this person's already reassembled their life quite a bit, I would imagine. But if you've got Uranus coming up to this point, you might already want to start thinking, okay, what am I really comfortable about? What am I really precious about? What is a no-go for me? And then you might want to consider, okay, if that no-go area got challenged, how might I deal with that? How could I be graceful about that? How could I initiate it? In fact, the more change work you do yourself, the less destructive Uranus is. So if you can see that you might actually have a stronger structure in your life by letting go of a lot of them, for instance, the only thing we can really count on is our our inner light, I think, because at certain points our bodies might fail us, and they're not really failing us. We might not be looking after our bodies, to be fair. Our cars might break down, something might happen in our house that we're not ready for, our relationships, all of the structures and things that we count on and think this is how it is and it's always going to be like that. When we rigidly hold that view of the world, it's almost like Uranus is like looking to see what's like too tightly bound. It goes against the rules of nature. Like if you think about it, I love gardening. I don't do enough of it, but I really like annual plants because you see all the phases of life, all the phases of growth in one season usually. So you see the little seed come up and you see the plant and it's all supple and green and beautiful. And then as it gets older, it starts to dry out and desiccate. And eventually it becomes brittle. And at that point, it's dead. It's given off everything it can do. Right at the last moment, it shoots out as many seeds as possible because it's practical. Life is practical. It wants to procreate. Life wants to do more of itself. And so, in a last ditch attempt, it gives out any last bits of life to just, for the survival of its species. But it desiccates and it gives way and later becomes compost. So Uranus, if you're brittle, like Uranus, a sharp wind from Uranus or like heavy rain or hail or something could completely take that plant out. But those trees that can like flow in the wind, that have got lovely strong roots, the ones that can move and bend, they're the ones that stay strong. So I think if you've got this right on your Saturn right now, you want to think like the life cycle of a plant, if that works for you as an analogy. Where are you so calcified? Where are you so desiccated and brittle that your life could be like cut into with a karate chop? Just see like where am I at risk by being too structured? Now, here's the exciting part of this. You might actually want to create a whole new structure for yourself. Like you could absolutely redesign your life if you kind of almost take it back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, where do I want to start? And like brainstorm, like really get passionate about it and think about your vision and values. So, what we started with Jupiter in this like previous little section, you might want to think, well, what is meaningful? What might make me feel like I've got a life worth living? And that longevity, Saturn loves longevity. How could I raise my status or change my status? How could I just ask all these different questions and see what comes up? And then you might actually realize that you've outgrown your current structure, which would be really, really positive and proactive. Because if you can recognize that yourself, you can start to make different changes or start to ask the questions. I wonder what I need to do to bring in this new vibration. And maybe that's all you need to do is have these inner conversations with yourself, recognize where there's an opportunity, and then allow it to come in. And boy, is that Uranus energy with Jupiter just going to light up and bring that opportunity in to change and transform your life. So, these can be seen in a negative way, and they can also be really, really positive. So the next one then, I've got quite a few clients going through this at the moment, actually, because this correlates to, people born around 1980, 81, maybe 82. So we're talking older millennials are sort of going through this pattern. So Chiron, the wounded healer, Chiron really shows us where we've been hurt in the past, really shows us what we've observed about our childhoods that maybe don't need to be passed on to the next generation. We've seen other people make these mistakes and we've lived through them. And we might be taking some of this hurt with us. And right now with Uranus and Jupiter, it's almost like rubbed in our face. It feels like things are a little bit raw. You're reminded that things are a bit tough and a bit raw, and and some of what's going on right now is reminding you of some of your vulnerabilities from childhood. Now, the great thing with Chiron is it really shows us how we become a coach and mentor ourselves, as we can release and like work on and release whatever it is we feel vulnerable about. So where we're engaged in the process of working on our vulnerabilities, we absolutely give ourselves the permission to break down, to move. A bit like what I was saying before with Saturn, sometimes things need to break down. Sometimes these patterns need to come up and out. We need to talk about them. We need to cry them out. We need to go for a brisk walk or whatever. There's all sorts of different ways of doing body work. Like Chiron is also known for healing, so the more we engage in this healing process, we've got a really cathartic and hopeful and possible way to kind of let go of things. And it may well show up because you're ready to become a mentor yourself. You're ready to become a coach. You're ready to maybe help other people on their healing journeys. And maybe you're ready to forgive as well. Maybe you're ready to absolutely recognize that I think most of us are all trying to do the best we can in life. We're not trying to hurt other people. We're all just kind of doing the best we can with the tools we've been given, just like our parents were, and their parents and their parents. And so this is almost like it sounds like my dogs are. Oh God, if you can hear the dogs barking in the background, please forgive me. They're so noisy sometimes. But this is a time where things could feel raw. You may feel very exposed. I'm saying exposed quite a lot. And of course, Jupiter and Uranus would both sort of expose what's going on for you. It's very sort of exposing energy, but it's there to help you be okay with being vulnerable. It's almost saying, look, come on, let's just be honest about this. Let's not hide this anymore. Let's not sweep this under the carpet. It's time to actually stand out and say, yeah, I've experienced this. And maybe I helped cause some of the things I'm going through. Or, like there's all sorts of different ways of looking at situations. Like our vulnerabilities, the way we've encoded our whole life. Like if you've had experiences from childhood where you felt like a victim, you may have ended up going into relationship after relationship after relationship that has matched that whole experience. And I'm not saying you've done anything wrong. I'm not, I'm not trying to judge anyone. What I notice with this energy is we get very, very acutely aware of the patterns that have led to the behavior, and the behaviors that have persisted. So yeah, I can see this to be a very intense time. Also, because anyone that's going through this, in the early 80s, they've also got their Uranus return coming up as well. You know, is that right? No, they've been through it. No, they've got it coming up. Sorry. Just so you know, I'm recording this at 20 to midnight. So sometimes I just need to look and go, what? So yeah, they're also coming into their Uranus opposition as well. So, they will also be feeling the energies of that. So this is, it's really fundamental healing stuff. And if you're on a coaching pathway, a healing pathway, you could be clearing some really, really big stuff and moving beyond that. Chiron, when we learn to work with that energy, we can absolutely create miracles for ourselves. There are many different types of astrologers that absolutely love Chiron. Chiron's not a planet, but, I use it in astrology as if it is a planet. Now, if you are wondering why I haven't included the other planets, that would be because in I used my my husband's mother. I use my mother-in-law as a reference point. So I know the sort of people that watch my channel, I know the age group. So I knew how far I needed to go back. And, if we go back as far as my mother-in-law, and her position of Pluto and all the subsequent positions of Pluto ever since, Uranus won't be in a conjunction with Pluto. Neither will it be in a conjunction with Neptune. And you'll only be having your Uranus return if you are like 83, 84. So I know full well that probably nobody that is watching is having Uranus going over these outer planets right now. So that's why I haven't included them. So I'm losing my voice now. Excuse me. So the last thing I wanted to do in this is just talk about the people who are born with Jupiter and Uranus in a conjunction. Because, people with Jupiter and Uranus in quite a good position often like astrology. Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is known as a sign that likes to see into the future, or likes to think into the future and cast a load of arrows in the direction of where he's going. So, Sagittarius has a natural love of all things future and other directions and sort of philosophy. Also, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, or one of the rulers of Aquarius. Aquarius is known as being, an astrologer's sign. A lot of people who are astrologers have a very strong Pallas Athena, which is an asteroid that a lot of us use. I've noticed loads and loads of astrologers with a lot of stuff in Aquarius, in particular Pallas Athena in Aquarius. So, the sort of Uranus energy, I think Uranus is really an astrologer's planet. So these two together, I think, often show people who really do quite like the futures, who really do quite like astrology, and who deep dive into it. Consequently, I had a massive choice of charts to use for people like that I know born between 68 to 69, also people born in the 80s when it went on, and some people in the 50s. So I've gone through some of my charts to just look for, and I've spoken to people as well and said, I don't suppose it's okay if I put your chart up. I'm not going to mention anything about them. So, it's kind of anonymous anyway. It's between us. So people born in 41 then, they are going through their Uranus return, and Jupiter is right on it. So this is, if they are watching, and I don't think I have many people in their 80s watching, maybe you've got a parent born at this time. One of the things I think is significant about the Uranus return, like Uranus is about consciousness, it's about freedom, and a little bit about rebelliousness. So people around this age really want to still do things their own way, even if they're really not able to. So I really do see in the maybe 4 or 5 experiences that I've had with people at this particular time, is they are fighting a little bit with reality. They're wanting to be a lot more independent than they are, and possibly rebellious with the people that are looking after them, and really struggling because they're not as independent as they used to be. They want to feel a sense of freedom. And that can be very difficult. And of course, with Jupiter there, that just emphasizes it. Also, they're a bit more accident prone, which can be very shocking. And of course, if people around them are leaving this reality as well. So shock is a really, really strong thing that comes up around this time. Now, if you're caring for somebody like that, one of the other things that is coming up for them is a change in consciousness. So sometimes, and you might know this, like if you're observing, your own parents or grandparents, is, some people, as they're nearing, a different time in their lives, that they lighten up. They almost appear to be here and there. In particular with people that are maybe living in homes, they start to lose their consciousness, or they start to have an altered sense of reality. And, we call some things Alzheimer's. And yet, I don't necessarily think that everybody that gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's is actually going through that. My sense is, my intuitive sense is that some people are actually starting to rejoin the mystery, like rejoin whatever is the other side when we pass out of these bodies. A bit like I've observed with my own children, that when they arrive, they often, for quite some time, still seem to be somewhere else. It's like they can see extra things around them. They notice other patterns. They notice other sights and sounds. They react to things in a different way, just like some really older people do. So I do also see this as a time in a change of consciousness, and it can be really, really confusing. Again, I'm not denying that some people get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it is a very real thing. I remember seeing my own grandmother get very, very poorly and confused, seeing things that wasn't happening from our perspective. And I recognize that this is a time for us to acknowledge there is a change in consciousness. So maybe if you've got somebody who is coming up to this stage, coming up to their Uranus return, if they're open and kind of quite accepting of the consciousness change they're going through, you might be able to prep them for it a little bit, get them interested in different types of consciousness and help them realize that that's also part of life, that, and again, I recognize that, I don't know what it's like to be their age, and yet they understand what it's like to be their age and also my age. So I'm not teaching grandma to suck eggs here, but if it can be helpful to know that astrologically our consciousness is changing and our sense of shock and also wonder and independence is also shifting, that could be helpful. So let's have a look at people in 1954 to 55. Yeah, so people born there would have had their Jupiter and Uranus in the sign of Cancer. So anyone born at that time would have had a square to Uranus, so both square to Neptune. So Neptune was in square to Jupiter and Uranus. Now that brings in a lot of extra sensitivity, and a lot of possible, like, where people are so creative that it's almost difficult to be, I don't want to say to be alive, but you almost can't express your whole creativity in one go through this mortal form, and it can be a bit disappointing. There is such a need to be creative that I think there's probably like drugs or drink or altered experiences that come out in some of these people. Also, anyone born around this time would have had an opposition to, so Uranus and Chiron would have been in an opposition. So this is quite a really deeply creative one, but not necessarily restful. So anyone born at this time will have had this real sort of like restless urge to create, and also possibly the pain of it not going as well as you wanted it to go. And possibly some of that pain and that desire to create is also coming from the childhood wounds. So, people maybe born at that time are really rebelling from their parents and the way their parents are raising them. And then there's this deeply, deeply creative urge, almost picking up on the human soul. And it's so, so creative, and you just can't quite get it out there. So this is, this is very sort of integral. I really see that the world has been quite changed by people born around this time. Very, very strong. Now, if we go up to the 60s, I know loads of people born with this Jupiter and Uranus in Libra. I really see a need for truth in people born at this time. In particular, there is quite possibly the south node in between these two, and obviously the north node here. Again, look, Chiron in opposition to Uranus. That's a bit uncomfortable. That creates this kind of sense of we need change. We really do need change from the past. So it's really giving people that have got this Jupiter Uranus, it's giving them this kind of idealism, that things absolutely have to change. Now, in this example here, I said this is in Libra, but this is showing up not in Libra. This is showing up in Virgo. Why is that? Oh, this is somebody who I'm not actually showing the exact conjunctions here. I'm showing somebody whose planets are coming into the conjunction, but they don't actually come into the exact conjunction until Libra. So this is one of my pals that has this in. These guys are in a conjunction, but not in the full conjunction, which started in Libra. So this good friend of mine has these come together in Virgo. They've also got Pluto there as well. So isn't it kind of interesting that, as the full conjunction comes in, it's absolutely, in opposition with Chiron. It's got this, it's even stronger when it's in its full opposition. Really, really intense, a really intense signature going on there. And whereas the people born in 1955 had a square to Neptune, these guys have got Jupiter and Uranus in a sextile to Neptune. So creativity is coming so much easier to these guys. And, for the people with the full conjunction in the sign of Libra, Libra is, it's ruled by Venus, but it's seen as one of the most creative signs. Like Venus loves creating things. Loves all things artistic and musical. So I just see that there's going to be so many talented people born at this time. And of course, these people might also be very talented in terms of consciousness, talented in terms of using their minds in a really beneficial way. They can be really, really talented and sensitive healers. There's a real sense and need for truth, I would say. It's really, really great. And interesting. And I've got great friends. And I've got quite a few friends with this 83 one as well. So this is the chart of somebody that I know who is really creative. And given that this is taking place in the sign of Sagittarius, this is somebody who wants to create something media-based, entertainment-based, something new. If you think of the energy of Sagittarius, it's absolutely about trends. And the sign of Sagittarius is sometimes known for fame and things like that. So I really wouldn't be surprised at all to see people creating something so much, like creating something social media-y and beyond. I'm pretty sure that there's a whole heap of people born with this kind of energy that have absolutely participated in growing all these new systems that people are using to be in contact, across different continents. I mean, obviously the people in 69 and 55 really would have had that as well. I've been told, and I did check it out, but Tim Berners-Lee, the alleged creator of the internet, was born in 55 with this pattern, not in the exact conjunction, but the I think they're about 4 degrees away from each other, but he had that. And then Steve Jobs was also born with this pattern. So if you think about how these guys have transformed our reality, I mean, that's pretty intense and pretty amazing. So, Jupiter and Uranus, you take this great idea and you make it so much better. And whew, boy, do these ideas really get shared. So I really see that there is something really unique going on with people born around this time. And like I said, it's also in opposition to Chiron. So interesting. I've not actually looked to see if that happens each time. Hang on one second. So in opposition to Chiron, in opposition to Chiron. Where is it? Not in opposition to Chiron. So it's not a given that that happens. Okay, that's good. I just needed to check that. um, and then in 1997, so we've got so like you'll be 24 if you're sort of like born then. 24? No, 27. Sorry. So people who are coming up to their first Saturn return, you're probably already becoming a bit aware of it. So you're 27, and this conjunction is also marked because you've got Neptune coming into the conjunction. So I wonder if that's a pattern as well, because if you look each time Neptune has been. So if we go back, this is what I love about astrology. So I'm doing this in real time now. Like astrologers are so intensely, sorry, curious, you know, because we're trying to crack codes and things. But so with this, there was a trine with Neptune. Then we had a square with Neptune. Then we had a sextile with Neptune. Then we had as not quite a almost a semi-sextile with Neptune. And then we've got a conjunction with Neptune. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what goes on the other side. Oh, yeah, then they're about a sign away from Neptune. So I wonder if that is a pattern. I didn't go back to 1941, but that's interesting that Neptune is incrementally getting closer and then further away in roughly the same increments. So that's interesting. So suffice to say, you know, I don't have any audience with this pattern. However, you might have a child born around 2010, 2011. I do just miss this conjunction. But these guys had a square to Pluto, which is giving them a lot of grit and determination, and also a need to deal with change. You know, like Pluto here. So like if you think of all the themes of Pluto, we've got like death and destruction, regeneration in a really, really big major way. And these guys are actually going to be needing to create something very inventive. They're going to be challenged to really think in terms of how can we use technology to avoid lots of things, and also how can we change our expectations for life, you know, because Pluto in this square is almost demanding it. They've also got this lovely Neptune and Chiron conjunction, which I say is lovely because it could be deeply healing and deeply nourishing, and also possibly give them a shyness, you know, a feeling that they're not that confident, that they're picking up on all sorts of different things, and just taking their time to calmly tune in with what's going on. So I would say people born around this time are deeply, deeply intuitive, in particular the ones born at the second part, when Jupiter and Uranus were in the sign of Pisces. Whew. So there you go. I've come to the end. I must just say thank you to everyone that's supporting me again. Just love you guys. Thank you so much. Boy, that was a bit of a deep dive. It's now 5 to midnight. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this has been an interesting little journey. I mean, the chances are you've not just got one planet that is in a conjunction or a sextile or a square to, you know, Jupiter and Uranus, but you might have an angle. I mean, I just hope this has given you an opportunity to see it from a whole new perspective. But anyway, sending you lots of love and hope and optimism and ideas and inspiration. You know, we really could live quite big and in quite an innovative way. You know, this conjunction is really there to sow the seeds of freedom and to create a whole new energy in this world. You know, this is setting the seeds and the seed, so sowing the seeds and setting the scene for something so much more magnificent than we can possibly imagine. So there you go. Lots of love to you, and hopefully catch you in another session real soon. Bye for now.